Well, today we've had a very passionate debate amongst the reps in Gibraltar around the proliferation of agency workers across both the public and private sector in Gibraltar. Our reps said enough is enough. This is not about an anti-agency workers position. It's about saying that agency workers should be converted into permanent roles, quality roles with decent T's and C's. So therefore, our members and our reps are today saying enough is enough, and the government should be working closely with Unite to actually remove agency workers and replace those with permanent quality roles within the organisations.
Could that be part of the problem, that the government and Unite may have been working too closely together?
Well, not at all, because there will be elements of the government's agenda which we agree with, and we will quite happily work constructively with them. Areas where we disagree, or we have areas where we have conflict, then we will actually address those in that manner. But it is absolutely clear that the proliferation of agency workers is not beneficial to those agency workers, it's not beneficial to the services that they work in, it's not beneficial to the users of those services, and ultimately it's not beneficial to the Gibraltarian economy as a whole.
How big a problem is it?
Well, we keep getting stories from our reps and from our members about where in some areas the agency workers outweigh those that are permanent employees. We recognise that agency workers provide a very, very important service in terms of covering peaks in demand, long-term sickness, maternity, and there is a genuine use of agency workers. But if those agency workers continue to start working for 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, 12 months, 2 years, then why are those roles not permanent roles? And our argument is that if an individual is required to be in the organisation for a prolonged period of time, that should be on a permanent contract, on a decent contract, on proper pay and on proper conditions, not on an ongoing, prolonged agency arrangement.
Could you have the situation where perhaps it would be so expensive to change the system, the investment would be so big that it just couldn't happen? You'd end up with people being fired.
Well, not at all. And first and foremost, why should those individuals be exploited as agency workers to pay them less than their permanent colleagues? But ultimately, if we're paying people decent wages with decent terms and conditions in secure employment, then they will have the confidence to spend money in the economy. And that will have a broader benefit to the Gibraltarian economy. It will boost consumption and we'll have a much stronger economy within Gibraltar. This exploitation of agency workers needs to end in Gibraltar.
You've mentioned confidence, and that was another question that I had for you. Other than the abuse, how demoralising is it for employees, especially for young employees?
Well, you hit the nail on the head. We want to create a pathway for young people within Gibraltar into jobs, into good quality jobs where they have the expectation of a long career within the organisation, whether it's public sector or whether it's private sector. And those agency workers as well are quite often not properly trained by their employer. They're left in a situation where they're having to deal with situations within their employment which they're unable to cope with because they've not been given the proper training by their employer. So if these roles are permanent, properly trained, then we will avoid those issues. And as I say, that will be beneficial to the individual, beneficial to the service, beneficial to the service users, and beneficial to Gibraltar as a whole.
The Chief Minister has given a commitment to reduce agency workers in the GHA and to eradicate them in the civil service. What's happening?
Well, they're welcome commitments, and we obviously want to see those commitments followed through. We want to ensure that those commitments are being met by the Government of Gibraltar, but we also need to look at the use of agency workers across the entirety of the public sector and also the private sector. And we do have a key issue in Gibraltar as well, that the agency workers regulations, in our view, are not fit for purpose. They are not comparable to the agency workers regulations in the UK and across the rest of Europe, and those need reform. And we invite the Government of Gibraltar to speak to us and have meaningful discussions around how we can properly use agency workers within Gibraltar, have proper agency worker agreements in place which ensure that agency workers are reviewed as to whether that agency post should be converted into a permanent role. There is a solution to this, and we obviously invite the Government of Gibraltar to have that conversation, and we also invite private sector employers to have that conversation with Unite as well.
Finally, just how much of a red line is it for Unite?
Huge. The debate upstairs, as I say, was extremely passionate. It boiled over at times because people are fed up with the use of agency workers. And I stress, this is not about anti-agency workers. This is about those individuals being given quality positions in employers and making sure they have secure employment with decent terms and conditions and have a career within that organisation.